Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tamara Russo Vesta, and I am a digital and community marketing manager with a company here in the Boston area.
Excuse
What
me,
that means,
Tamara, you want to
sure.
either get a little closer to your mic or talk a little bit louder. You're very soft.
Is that a little bit better?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. Hopefully, this helps everyone. I am a digital marketing manager, and what that means is that for my company, I administer and manage the website, which we have built in WordPress. This was a new site that launched in February of this year, and it's a little bit more complicated than the sites that I'll be talking to you about today. But we'll go through the presentation here, and if you have questions during the course of the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat, and Huey will let me know, and we'll answer them as they come in. Or you can save it till the end, either way. So the agenda that I just wanted to go over today, because WordPress is a very big conversation, and in 50 minutes, that's not a lot to cover, but just a little bit about what is WordPress, why use it compared to what you might be using today, what are some of the requirements, how to get started, and hopefully when you leave here today, you'll be able to create a page, create a blog, as well as start to manage your website. So, and then I provide some additional tools for you as we go through. So you want to build a website, or you have a website now and it just has become a bear. So what the heck is WordPress? Which is always the question that I get. So it's actually a little bit of a complicated question because WordPress is a couple of different things. The first and foremost is WordPress really is just an open source and free tool for blogging, as well as for what's called content management on a website, which means if you have PDFs or you have videos or you have graphics, WordPress can be a really great way to do that. It's based on using a couple of different tools for programming and database management, and it can run on a web hosting service, both based on WordPress itself or a separate service that you can sign on for. It also features a lot of flexibility through various plugins and templates that are available widely on the internet. So as you can see, that's what makes it so popular. So, but there are some limitations to this. Nothing that is simple is without its limitations. So first of all, WordPress is not really suitable for very complicated websites. So if you have a site that requires integrated forums or a marketplace or on-demand video or anything like that, WordPress might be a little bit too simplistic for you. It also doesn't really allow for a lot of user management. So if you have multiple people managing your website, but you only want them managing certain parts, that becomes a problem with WordPress as well. Also, if you want to have any sort of forum, any sort of place where your users can come and engage, you usually have to rely on a third-party program to do that, and it doesn't really integrate with WordPress. So that can become a bit of a problem. Um, and for a certain type of WordPress, it does require a basic knowledge of database management and domain hosting. That's not required for the type of WordPress we'll be talking about today, but I'm covering a little bit of both of them here during our presentation. So why should you use WordPress? What really is the benefit? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it is an excellent content management system. So if you run an organization that does have a lot of PDFs, has a lot of videos, has a lot of images or documents, WordPress can really help you keep track of those and help you get those out to your users in a very manageable way versus just creating a page and throwing them all on there. And that's one of the reasons why my company decided to use WordPress. The biggest feature though for me is it does allow for a lot of search engine optimization features that are built right in. And for those of you that might not be familiar with what SEO is, Google requires sites to have some sort of value. So when someone goes into a search engine and types in any particular words, Google looks across the internet and says, what are the freshest, what are the best, what are the most relevant sites for me to serve up right now? And it brings those to the top of the search. Well, WordPress does a really great job of helping you use search engine optimization in a very passive sort of way. Also, if you're blogging, the fresher your content, the more likely it is that Google will say, hey, this is a brand new, fresh site with new content. Let me serve this up first. So that's really why we decided to really align with WordPress for our site. Um, Updating content is super easy. And I'll show you that as we go through. Any of you that have ever managed a website just using straight HTML or any of the other platforms, you might find that adding a new page or updating a page requires some basic knowledge of code and so on. WordPress doesn't require that. So it's really an easy way to keep content fresh on your website. Um, and one of my favorite parts is the fact that it's an open platform. So out on the internet, you would be amazed at the number of developers that have built custom features and templates to make your website look absolutely amazing for little or no cost. So all in all, generally WordPress is a good fit for small to medium environments. But then there's this really, really big question. There are really two different types of WordPress. And some of you may have noticed this if you've ever gone out on the internet and decided to look for what is WordPress. There's WordPress.com and then there's WordPress.org. The differences are actually fairly stark. The simplest way to boil it down is one is you want to rent your website and one is when you want to buy your website. Today's discussion will be talking mostly about WordPress.com because once you get to a certain point, WordPress converges and as far as the features and how it works. But for all intents and purposes, WordPress.com is the easiest to get started with because it doesn't require you to go out and find a web host, which will be an additional cost. You can have a very small, very feature-rich website for really not even $100 a year. So WordPress.com is a great fit for most because it does allow for self-hosting. It does include backups and it does include custom domains, although they are an extra cost. If you want to have a domain that has WordPress.com at the end of it, you can actually have a website for free. It would just be, mygreatorg.wordpress.com. WordPress.com does also allow you to have really hundreds of different themes and layouts, even more than that if you decide to purchase one. The free ones, though, are actually quite stunning for the most part, but you can actually even customize some of those if you wanted to get into the style sheets behind the scenes and make some modifications to colors and so on. On WordPress.org, this is really the way that you can have custom themes, or even better, if you really want to have something that's amazing and unique, you can actually hire design agencies to create your own personal theme. So in essence, what happens is WordPress.com is really truly a portal you go to, you sign up, and you choose your template and you're off and running. WordPress.org, you download the WordPress software, you decide what hosting company you're going to utilize, you work with them to set up the site and actually put your domain together, and then you build from there. So obviously WordPress.org is a bigger investment both in time and money. Both sites allow for sharing on social media, so that's always a nice thing. If you have a website, get the word out there through social media. In WordPress.com, many of the popular features for like having comments and polls and so on are already built in. They don't really require any additional plugins or modifications to your template. That's not always the case with WordPress.org. In both cases, the support available for WordPress is pretty pervasive. You can have support forums online. In WordPress.org, they actually, if you have a web hosting company, they generally provide some sort of bare minimum phone support For your website, if you enhance with more detailed support, you obviously get a better level. But really, for WordPress.com, most of the questions and most of the issues that you will ever have are available online 24/7. You just search their knowledge base and find your answer. Um, and then finally, I mean, this is kind of where the rent versus buy comes in. With WordPress.com, you have to register for an account and you sign in through their portal. For WordPress.org, no registration because you own it. It's yours. Before I move on to the next slide, if anyone has any questions about the differences between the two, feel free to jump into the chat, and I'm more than happy to answer them as we go along.
Camera, there aren't any right now, but if someone started a website on WordPress.com, then decided, well, okay, we want to have it hosted somewhere, can it be moved, or do they have to start over again?
It can be moved, but it's a manual move. Because the platforms themselves are very similar in how the templates are laid out, you would simply go behind the scenes into the dashboard and copy the templates over to your new site. It would definitely have to be a manual move, though. You could pay someone to do that for you, but otherwise that would be the way you'd have to go.
Okay, and
I don't.
Go ahead.
Because I think either that or you'd actually be able to work. It's actually, in a lot of ways, it might depend on your web hosting company. If they offer that service for you, it could be part of what you sign on for when you sign up with them. It kind of depends on the web hosting company, because you're going from WordPress.com as your hosting company to another one, which would be whatever one you selected. There's literally hundreds of them that you can choose from.
Okay, Roy Rob asks a question on the chat box. Is there a free option for personal sites?
Absolutely. So with WordPress.com, they are free, but again, you're limited to using the WordPress.com domain. So if you wanted it to be my personal site, it would be my personal site at .wordpress.com. So that would be the limitation there. But literally for dollars a month, you could have a personal site without the WordPress.com at the end of your domain name. It's really amazing how inexpensive it can be. But you'd be limited, right? So you'd be limited about how many pages you could have, how many visitors per month, things like that. I show that a little bit later on. If we are hosted on APCUG, is WordPress an option? Yes, absolutely. If you are self-hosting, I believe you could have WordPress. You could use WordPress, but you're not using that today, as Huey said, right? You're using Drupal. Is that right?
Well, no, but we do give free sites. The problem being is I believe WordPress runs on a Linux server, and we the hosted sites that we have are a Windows server.
I gotcha. Okay, I get the question now. That makes sense. So I want to talk a little bit about what's required for either of the platforms now that we see the difference between the two. So if you opt to want to use WordPress.org, what's required is actually not all that much. It requires you to select a web hosting company. A couple that I'm familiar with that are really popular are WP Engine, which is what I use, Bluehost. There's also GoDaddy. There's also, there's literally hundreds of them. It really is just a question of looking across the internet, determining who has a really good uptime and who is a really good service to deal with from a support perspective, and then how much you want to spend per month. And then most reputable WordPress hosts would have both of these requirements, which is the hypertext preprocessor. Sorry, the term PHP does not match up. The acronym does not match up with what it actually means, and it's basically just a coding language. And then the MySQL is a free open source database management system, and it's really the most popular language for database management, so most reputable sources have those today. but the PHP actually stands for Hypertext Preprocessor, which is a word, which is a mouthful. And again, it's just a all-purpose scripting language. And again, hosts like WP Engine or Bluehost, this isn't even a problem. And then the final requirement is really just downloading and installing WordPress, which you wouldn't even believe how easy it is. It's literally a wizard step-by-step process, and you're off and going. Places like WP Engine and Bluehost, they are specifically designed for WordPress hosting, so it's literally foolproof, which is great. My experience with WP Engine was great. So the requirements for WordPress.com, a little different. So all you really need is a hand, a mouse, and potentially a credit card. And even the credit card is actually quite optional. You just need to go to WordPress.com, be able to type in your email address, your information as far as who you are, and you're off and running. So it's as you can see, fairly simple to do. So back to and I go back and forth here at the beginning, but as we in the next two slides, we actually just get right to talking about WordPress, because again, this is where they converge and they're in essence the same thing, regardless of whether you're self-hosting or using a web host. If you opt for WordPress.com, really it's just any reputable web hosting company will provide you those step-by-step instructions. And I actually provide a couple of links in the PDF, which I believe will, when you view the slides, you should be able to click on those because they are active. Huey, does that happen when you make these slides available? Because if not, I'll text out the links.
Yeah, but they should be available.
Okay. Bernard asks if Joomla is an option. I'm not sure what Joomla is, I'm afraid.
Joomla is like Drupal.
Okay.
It's similar, but it's something different.
Okay. Just to make everyone aware, I'm a WordPress administrator. My web experience is solidly in WordPress. I am by no means, shape, or form a programmer of any type. So, unfortunately, I won't be able to answer a lot of your programming questions, but if you have them, I do have a lot of people that I know, and I'm happy to get questions answered for you that could be on that. But I've got Huey too, so perhaps he can answer those questions. So if the PDF has the links enabled, those will be here. If not, I'll make sure they get out. But there's plenty of videos, there's plenty of guides, there's plenty of step-by-step instructions for installing WordPress. It will literally take you no more than 15 minutes if you're lucky. When you are installing WordPress, your initial, and you're picking your domain name, which is what you will do here, it's very important that you don't forget to create an email account with your domain name. So that's where you would want to do website@mypersonalsite.com or webmaster@mypersonalsite.com, just so you establish your domain name. To get started with WordPress.com, you literally go to WordPress.com. You enter in your email address, your username and password, and then you select the type of WordPress options you'd want to have. So if you wanted to have a free plan, as you can see, it would be your website name.wordpress.com, and you would have a free site and you're up and running. A lot of people opt for this if they're just going to blog. Generally, if you're going to have a real website, you'd want to have the domain name to just be your website name.com. And with WordPress, that's literally, I believe the starting is like $100 a year to have that domain, so it's relatively low. Pamela asks, I don't understand why we use WordPress if we use GoDaddy to host it. Why not just use GoDaddy to create your site, as they have templates, etc.? That's actually a really good question. It's really a preference. WordPress has and I'm not familiar with GoDaddy's templates and GoDaddy's way to build a website, but WordPress is an open architecture. So what that means, Pamela, is you can actually look across the internet, and there will be plugins and templates, and there'll be all sorts of features that your website will be able to do that are outside of just what WordPress offers. It's an open source software, so that means any developer in the world can develop different templates and plugins for it. So it makes it a far more feature rich than something that your web hosting company may be able to supply to you. And that's just been my experience with WordPress. I don't really know about each individual domain hosting um, programs, but I assume that that's probably the biggest difference. They're not open source. So that's why most people do opt for something like WordPress.
If I
It's a
could,
great choice.
I know that GoDaddy, you can go to GoDaddy and you can set up an account, and one of the choices there is WordPress, and you just click one button and it automatically does all of the install for a basic WordPress website, and then you can go in and add the various templates and modules and so on that are available anywhere. So it's just a way of
Yeah, that's
hosting with a lot of support as well, and then you can use your own domain name. So it can be quite inexpensive to do it on GoDaddy just as it is on Bluehost or any of the other domains.
right. And but Judy does raise a good point, right? GoDaddy doesn't offer support for WordPress because they're not considered I don't know if you want to call it a WordPress partner or a WordPress authorized hosting. They can host it, but really you're better off to look at really a WordPress hosting service. And there's, like I said, there's hundreds of them, so it's not limited. GoDaddy is just inexpensive and easy. But in that regard, you get what you pay for, right? They say pick three. Simple, easy, or simple, inexpensive, or what's the other one? There's three anyway, and you got to pick two. So I think GoDaddy kind of falls into that. Again, Judy, I'm not familiar with them completely either. I've always used a WordPress hosting company, which again was WP Engine, but there's definitely lots of options out there. Why? What what do you do when you already have a host? You already have a host now, and you're just not using WordPress. You can actually convert your site over to WordPress and utilize the same host. You just have to find out whether they support WordPress, and most do. So you should be fine there. That's from Bill. Now, what we're talking about today, just to bring this back around, is we are talking about the self-hosted version. You can have the option to go to the web host version. It is a little bit more complicated and it is a bigger cost. Does that mean it's worth it? Absolutely. The more you pay, the more you get. But if you're looking for a very easy, turnkey, simple solution that's easy to manage, where it gives you a lot of flexibility and gives you the ability to have a lot of control for very little cost, WordPress.com is a great option for you. And as you saw here, actually really easy to do. So once you've actually gone through this registration process with WordPress.com and you've decided that you wanted to have your own domain and you've selected that you want to do it for a year, you're ready to go. And that's really about it. Looks like, just to clarify, Leon just said that GoDaddy does support WordPress.com sites and blogs. Keep in mind the difference between supporting and actual providing support are two very different things. So GoDaddy, from a technical perspective, might support WordPress.com, but if you have a problem and you call them, do they have the ability to support your WordPress installation? I don't know the answer to that. So Leon, I agree. You might want to check their site and just clarify that. John, that's a good point. He says well, I assume you can all read this as well as I do, but use GoDaddy for your domain names and HostGator for hosting. That's a great advice. Absolutely. So I just want to get started a little bit on actually getting your site built, because that's why we're all here, right? We're trying to actually get a site built and get it up and running. My goal by the end of the session is you should be able to know the WordPress dashboard. You should be able to create a post, which is more like a blog, and create a page, which would actually be your website. So by the time we end this, hopefully y'all will be able to do that. So when you actually go ahead and you finish your registration, you're going to then be brought to a page that is it's in essence a blank slate. So when you look at the page and you go to the upper left-hand corner, you're going to see the name you selected for your site. And in my case, I selected something called Community Talk. I clicked on that and then I selected Dashboard. And what that's going to do is that's going to actually bring me behind the scenes to my website and give me this very feature-rich way to control how my website acts, the content, how it looks, and who can use my website from a website management perspective. So the dashboard is really, really great. But the first thing you really need to do is you need to pick a theme. You don't want to just have this plain blah website. Luckily, there are literally, I say thousands, there's thousands available, but hundreds of free templates available in WordPress. You simply go to dashboard and then you go down to where it says appearance. And I'll show you this in the next slide. It actually just looks like a little paintbrush. And you select themes and it brings you to this very, and you can see an example of the themes dashboard here. It brings you to this area where you can actually look at all these different themes and figure out what works for your site. Are you a photographer? Are you wanting to start a recipe site? Are you wanting to have a site for your user group? Are you wanting to have like a newsletter site? All the different templates are there. And each one of these can be marginally they can be customized a little bit so that you can actually give them a unique look and feel. In my particular case, I selected that very first template, and as you can see, it then lights up with this gray bar. And what you need to make sure you do there is click that blue button that says activate. So even if you select a template, it doesn't always activate unless you actually physically activate it. So you need to make sure that you do that. And some of you might be asking yourself this question at this point, because a lot of people think of WordPress as a blog site. And that's absolutely true, right? First and foremost, WordPress started off as a way to blog. Well, it does so much more than that. It depends on how you really configure it. And when you pick this template, it's really important to think, okay, I don't want this to be a blog. I want this to be a website. So look at the different templates and decide what's going to work best for you. And in this particular case, I selected this one template because I thought, hey, it would look really great for my site. From here, you can actually choose between free or premium. The premium templates, obviously, the free templates are free, so you can actually just select those, but they are pretty limited. They're looking at blog and you're looking at some great sites for people that want to be, showing off their photography or whatever. Some of the better ones are definitely in the premium area. So feel free to explore those too and see if it would be worth it for you to have those. So there are a couple of ways to create a page. So what we're going to talk about now is we're going to go on to how to change this WordPress from a blog to a website. So how do you do that? We're now going to talk about how you create a homepage, how you then add more pages. We're going to talk a little bit about widgets and some of the plugins, but honestly, that could be a whole other session because there's literally hundreds of widgets that your site can accommodate. So we're going to go into that as well. So right now, if you were looking at your site, and this is why it would be so great to be showing you like an actual demo versus the PowerPoint, but we'll make do. Right now, if you were in your site, it would look like a blog. So how do you change that? Well, really a blog is nothing more than a type of website. It just shows that the newest content is at the top of the page. That's how a blog works. A blog can also be one part of a website that has multiple pages. So in WordPress, it's easy to add pages and other things to your blog in literally seconds. So in order to change your blog to a website, the first thing you need to do is create a home page, which will remain static. So that's what we'll talk about a little bit as well. So we're going to go over the dashboard first because that's where this is done, right? That's where you actually create your pages and you create your appearance and you add pictures and all the things that you want to do to make your site look great. So I'd like to take a little time to go over this dashboard. And if at any point I'm going a little too fast, just, put something in the chat and say, hey, let's let's cut this down a little bit, only because I want to make sure we get everything in that we can. So the dashboard really is going to be your new best friend, right? This is the wizard behind the curtains. And this is the area where you make everything happen. This is where you add pages. This is where you can modify your templates to your site. And this is where you add images to your site, as well as set who can have access to it. So if you were to look at this from the left to the right, when you go into your WordPress dashboard, all of these areas are actually sitting on the left of your page. I just broke them down because clearly they can't all fit on one PowerPoint slide. At the top of your dashboard is your home area. This is where you would view everything that relates to your site, as far as you want to see how many people are looking at your site. You want to see what other content you might be looking at on WordPress. And you can also see what people are searching for when they come to your site. So that's some pretty valuable information. And that's usually when you go into the dashboard, the first place you'll see. As you go further down on the left-hand side of your dashboard screen, you're going to see posts. Posts are the blog posts. Posts are what hit your site in chronological order and are not static by any means. They are the most active part of your site. I hope that when you leave this session, the thing you walk away with the most is understanding that blogging is critically important to the success of your site, because it is the area where everything will be the freshest and everything will be the most up to date, as far as just how up to date you've made it. So hopefully this posts area will become one of your favorite spots. When we go to the next column and we look at media, this is actually where you store all of your content, such as images, PDFs, videos, and any other file that you might want to have available on your website. Just because you post it in media doesn't mean that it's readily available. It just means that it's available for you to build into a page or a post. So anything that you put on your site needs to go into the media library. Pages is just like it sounds. It's all the static pages on your website. So your About Me page, your Contact Us page, your home page would all be built in the Pages section of your dashboard. Appearance, again, just like it sounds. This is how your site looks and how it acts. This is where all of your themes are dictated. This is where you build your menus. So you know how when you go to a top of a website and you see the menu that says, home, products, about us, contact us, so on and so forth, that's done in your appearances. And then also any sort of customization of your site that you want to do would be done in appearance. John has asked, just wondering why APCUG uses Google Hangouts, which is free, and live demos can be displayed.
Well, we can do live demos here too, but time constraints are what's hampering us here. You're trying to show us the beginnings of it as opposed to demoing it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've actually used Google Hangout many times in the past. And it is great. I think it's just, a question of amount of time that we have, as Huey said. But
and we also support 100 people.
Yeah, yeah. I think Google Hangouts only like 15.
Mm-hmm.
Any given for the free version. Anything else you've got to pay for. So, but good question, John. Going back into the dashboard here, and hopefully again I'm not going too fast through this, and it's just our time is so limited. Users, again, this is where you control who has access to what. This is also where you would dictate if you wanted to have multiple blog authors as opposed to just yourself. That would be here as well. And then tools. So this is where you would have anything else that WordPress might have available for you as far as importing or exporting. This might be where you could export a lot of the content from your site to bring it somewhere else if you wanted to. I don't know if that's a free tool to answer the question earlier. That would be something I've never personally done. So, and I hate to answer definitively one way or the other if I've never used the tool. But it seems as though that tool is available there, whether it's free or not, I'm not sure. And then in settings, it's everything else. And we wouldn't really have a lot of time to discuss that today, but that's where you would actually be able to put any sort of polls on your site, where you would actually be able to put maybe a discussion forum at the bottom of a blog, things like that. Are there any questions about dashboard at all before I move on to the next? It's a big topic, but I touch on it here in a few more slides.
There's nothing out there right now.
Yes, Google, if you do tie it to the YouTube channel, you can have people watch the YouTube channel. But as far as participating in the Hangout, that's right. It would only be 10 presenters at the time. Or 10, I shouldn't say 10 presenters. It would only be 10 people actually in the Hangout. The rest would be viewing it as a video event. So that's correct, John. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about creating your homepage, taking your WordPress account that you've just made and actually making it a website as opposed to a blog. So the very first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to create your homepage. And this is so simple, it's amazing. Really, the first thing that you would do is you would go into your dashboard and you'd click on Pages. And then you would click Add New, as you would see the menu pop up on the right-hand side. Once the page pops up, the title of the page should be Home, but I mean, you can name that whatever you want. I just always, I think by default, most people want to know that that is their home page. And then you'd basically want to put on that page what you'd want. So if you want images, if you want content, if you want links to other areas, you'd create your home page just as you would a blog page. And then you publish it. Now, what I do is I then like to create another page that's just titled post. And this is so that you have another page behind the scenes that you can mess with in a new site. Because then what you'll end up doing is once you publish both pages, you'll then go down to settings in your dashboard and you'd select reading. And then on the right-hand side here, you'd see what the reading settings look like. So now you can see this is where you have to change the setting for this particular page. So now you can actually set the static page to home. So now your front page is that home page that you just created, and it is a permanent fixture. Well, permanent meaning it's your home page. You can change whatever you want on the site at any time. Don't forget, though, to scroll all the way down to the bottom and click Save Settings. Don't just make this change and think that it happens. Everything you do in WordPress, you need to change. You need to save, either in draft or publish, either way. So once you've done that, you've actually created your home page, which is amazing when you think about it. You have now just created a page. And it will show up in your navigation. It'll show up in your menu. It'll be everywhere you want it to be. It'll be right on your front page. So now you've made a home page. But truly, I mean, what's the difference between post and page? And we just talked about that. Posts are basically put in chronological order, and those will be your blog. You can create sticky posts that will always come up top before the other things in chronological order. So if in your blog you want to have a newsletter or you want to have an events blog that always stays at the top that you refresh, you can do that. Pages are not static and they are not listed by date. In WordPress.com, they don't use tags and categories. Now, what that means is you can, in WordPress.org, in your own instance of WordPress, you can actually take your pages and tag them based on what type of page it is. So if you have a product page, you can actually tag it as a product page. If you have, if you have a services page, you can tag that as a service page. Then whatever other pages that you build that are also aligned with those, you can actually tag those as well. And part of WordPress.org will then allow you to have kind of this sidebar of content that says, oh, you're interested in this page. You may also be interested in this page and this page and this page and this page. WordPress.com does not do that the same way. It's more of a manual process. So just be aware that when you create this, you won't be able to have them tagged that way. However, your blogs, you can. Your blogs, you can actually set up a bunch of different categories and a bunch of different tags. So when someone goes to your blog, if they only want to learn about past events, and you tag your blogs to say show only past events, they can click on that and the blog will only serve up that particular category. So it's kind of powerful in the blog. Pages can be displayed in the sidebar of your website if you use the page widget. It just depends on the theme that you have. So it's another way to kind of serve up that content. So when should you create a page? Well, obviously a good way to create the reason to create a page is something that you don't want to have change very much, like your About Us page. That's really the time you would want to create a page over a post. You might also want to create a page if you're going to have something that could be updated on a fairly regular basis, but in essence wouldn't change very much. A page would also be something that you'd want to have attached to your main site navigation. So when you're actually thinking about designing your website, you want to make sure that you keep that in mind. And as I mentioned earlier, a post is just when you want to update your people that are coming to your site, your visitors. You want to give them a reason to keep coming back, and you want to keep Google very interested in your site. And creating a post or a blog is the best way to do that.
We have about 5 minutes.
Yep, I know. I looked at the clock. I'm like, how did time go by so fast? So just a really quick overview of widgets. Why should you use them and why should you care? A widget's a fancy tool. All it is a way that you can add, change, and arrange the sidebar content of your website. So if you want to have a widget that says, hey, show everything that's happening on Facebook for our same account over here, you can do that. You want to have a widget that says, follow us on our social media sites, you can do that. If you want to have a widget that points to the updated blog posts, you can do that as well. Just a fancy way of saying, how can I make my site look better and allow people to do more with it? And those are easily configured through your dashboard under widgets. So luckily it's fairly easy to get to. You go to Appearance/widgets and you configure them. So as I mentioned at the top of the session, one of the things I hope you walk away with is understanding that blogging is critically important to the success of your website. And a lot of people think, but a blog is just for, my teenager or my, 40-year-old, I don't know, cousin who's doing this or whatever. But blogs truly are the number one way to keep your site fresh and to keep your visitors interested, because they're always going to come back for new content, and your blog is the great way to do that. It also keeps Google very interested because it says, oh, this site is not just some site languishing off in the ether. It actually is a site that people are visiting and is updated regularly. Really, if you have any social media as well, so if you are a Google Plus user or you are on Facebook or you do have a Twitter account, blogs are the hub for all your social media activity, and it will keep people coming back to your website. Otherwise, if your content always stays the same, people will read it once and they'll never come back. So really, blogging is so important. And if you have a website, there's no reason to not have a blog. Almost all of them do these days. One of the questions that I get a lot is, how often should you blog? At a minimum, once a week. If not every day. But who has time for that, right? But blogging could be a whole other conversation, but just walk away from this knowing that blogging is critical to your site success. Some additional tools, again, if the PDF that this presentation will be available for you in allows for links, I have linked to some very helpful tools for being able to assist you in building your website and making your website everything it should be, including a Google Plus group for WordPress that is so active and so amazing. So I would highly suggest you check that out at the very minimum. So just a quick summary, if you're looking for a turnkey solution to launch a website, you want to walk out of here today and have a website up and running in less than 10 minutes, WordPress.com is your choice. If you're looking for something highly customizable that allows for complex user interaction like forums and a marketplace, and are interested in content management, WordPress.org is your choice, but that's going to be a bigger investment and it is going to require a lot more of your time to set up. Again, blogging, please blog. And And really, there's really at this point nothing holding you back. It's so simple to have a website that is everything that you hoped it would be. And I hope today I was able to tell you that. So that pretty much wraps up my session. If you have any questions now, let's jump in. If not, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity presenting to you. And I hope you've all had a great virtual conference.
Thank you, Tamara. I do want to answer one of the questions about APCUG is supporting a WordPress site. One of the things that we do have is we do have a GoDaddy account, which we could set you up a subdomain, and you could play with WordPress there. But I would highly suggest go to WordPress.com first. Try the free one. Play with it a little bit. If you're comfortable with it, then contact me, hpoplock at apcug.org. If your group is a current member, we can set you up a subdomain just to play with on GoDaddy, and then we can see if that's what you want to do. So we do have some opportunities for you to use WordPress, and we have not had anyone want to have a WordPress site, so we have not investigated how to set it up, but we can do that as well.
And if anyone has any additional questions following this, or if you're going through the presentation and you have questions, I'm very active on Twitter. Just reach out to me there. I put my Twitter handle here, and I will be more than happy to provide whatever assistance I can.